What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Law Dad Roy podcast, where legal meets real life and we talk about what really goes on behind the scenes in personal injury law, business, and being a present dad in the middle of it all. Now, today's episode is a little spicy, a little real. Honestly, it's one I've wanted to do for a while. It's called Behind the Billboards, What PI Lawyers Really Do. Y'all have seen the ads, you've heard the slogans, you've passed 10 lawyers on your drive to work, and you probably rolled your eyes at least 7 of them. Look, I get it. The ads can be annoying. But here's the thing. Behind the billboards, behind the TV ads is an entirely different world. And if you think it's just call me and I'll get you a check, then buckle up, because today I'm pulling back the curtain on the actual work that goes into personal injury law, from the first call to the courtroom, everything that goes into it. So, the very first call, that's where most cases start. The phone rings, or a DM comes in, an email comes in, somebody walks through the front door of the law firm, they were just rear-ended. Maybe they fell out of a store, or maybe their child was hurt. They're in pain, they're overwhelmed, and they don't know where to start. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Most people don't even realize they have a case. And I know what you're thinking. Why would they be rolling into a law firm if they don't even know they have a case? Well, truthfully, most people are just looking for answers. How do I get the treatment that I need? How do I pay my medical bills? And they really just want to talk with somebody who knows the way through what they're going through, because they haven't been there before. Typically, they'll downplay the injury, or they've already called and talked to the insurance company and maybe even said the wrong thing. That first conversation, it's everything. Because we're not just deciding if we can take the case. We're deciding how to protect the person from making it worse. That means advising them to stop talking to the insurance company, to document everything, and to get the medical attention that they deserve, even if they're not sure how they're going to pay for it. You know what we're not doing? Cutting a check. That doesn't happen on day one. That's TV fantasy. On day one, we are getting the information that we need to investigate what actually happened for that person. And that's the next phase. The next phase is the investigation. And this is where most of the work happens that no one talks about. We're talking about getting surveillance footage if it exists and hasn't been erased. Going out and actually looking for Ring cameras in the area of where it happened. Looking for cameras up on telephone poles. Looking for witnesses. Tracking down witnesses who change their numbers every other week and trying to figure out where these people are. Sometimes we have to get personal investigators to track down witnesses because they're not always so easy to find. Reviewing 911 logs, crash reports, repair estimates, even weather data, depending on what specifically happened. We do all of this. Sometimes we have to visit the scene ourselves. Yes, even at night, to see what the lighting looks like. When someone's about the lighting in an apartment building or a parking garage or the lighting on a particular street, there's only one way to actually perceive what it's like, and that's to go see it. And sometimes we have to do that. When somebody says, oh, well, my view was blocked by a bush at that corner, well, we have to go take a look. And the sooner we can get out there to see the scene in as close to exactly the same situation in exactly the same state as when the incident occurred, the better for the case. And if it's a more complex case, maybe a semi-truck wreck, then we're pulling black box data, GPS logs, driver logs, things that magically disappear if you don't act fast. We have to get notices out to the company to preserve those things so that they don't have a good excuse for not keeping them. We work with private investigators and expert witnesses in this very beginning phase a lot of times. These are people who specialize in biomechanics, human dynamic, how people react in certain situations, accident reconstruction, sometimes trucking regulations. Of course, they don't come cheap. We have to pay them, but they're essential. They're essential to get to the bottom of what really happened and to make the case as strong as it can be. That's why it frustrates me when people sometimes say, well, attorneys are just middlemen. I'll just negotiate directly with the insurance company. Bad move. We're not middlemen. We're case builders, strategists, advocates. And sometimes Investigators, like I said, we go out a lot of times and look at the scene in order to figure out what do we need to make this case stronger for the person. All of that happens on the front end. So there's no check cut, as soon as somebody walks in. It takes time because you only get one bite at the apple. You only get one opportunity to get made whole for that incident. And so we want to make sure that your case is as strong as it can possibly be so you can get maximum recovery. Because if that recovery is not enough, typically you don't get to come back later and ask for more. That's just not how it works. Now let's talk about medical treatment, which is one of the hardest parts of any case. Why? Because number one, people don't heal on a timeline. And number two, people are generally not wanting to get a lot of medical treatment. They would rather tough it out, see if they get over it on their own. But insurance companies and insurance adjusters, they use all that against clients. They say, well, you didn't treat right away. You didn't treat enough right away. There's this gap in treatment. And the client says, well, I was hurting. I was just seeing if I could get better. But look, clients in general, the state your body is in, and medical treatment is what is actually needed, not only to help you get better, but to help build the case, to show the other side objective proof of what it is that you're going through. Some clients need physical therapy, some need surgery, some can't afford treatment. Others don't trust doctors. And sometimes injuries don't show up until weeks later, especially in cases like traumatic brain injury or herniated discs. People think, oh, my back's just sore after the wreck. They don't realize that there might be something going on. Our job is to help them get access to care. A lot of times when people come to us, they don't have health insurance, or they don't have the ability, to pay copay after copay to get the treatment that they need. And we actually are able to help, in some cases, people get access to care. We help them make sure it's documented properly. It actually, doesn't do you any good to go into a doctor if you're not being forthright about what it is you're actually going through. You have to tell them everything. And we want to make sure that that gets documented so that there is a contemporaneous record, a real-time record of what it is you're going through. And if necessary, we help line up future treatment estimates for trial. There are some circumstances where orthopedic might say, you may need surgery, but the client wants to try every single conservative treatment first, and that's okay. That's okay, because we sometimes can go out and get an estimate for that future surgery so that a jury or an adjuster can consider it, even if you haven't got it yet, if the doctor says that you more than likely are going to need it. But look, these insurance companies, they look for every gap in care, every inconsistent complaint. Every time someone said, I'm doing okay at the ER, even if they were just trying to be polite and not cause alarm. They look at those things and they try to use those things to minimize what you've gone through and to minimize the case. So we're not just fighting for care, we're fighting against these false narratives. And these false narratives actually are part of our general medical care, right? Medical documentation kind of comes in three parts. Initial injury, what does the client say? Treatment, and then we want to show that the client got to maximum medical improvement and that they're all better. But the truth is sometimes people aren't better. And so we want to make sure to work with the healthcare providers to make sure that they're accurately documenting not only the course of care, but the progress. If someone is still, in 4 out of 10 pain at the end of that treatment, we want to make sure that's documented. We don't want to say, oh, it's all better, they don't need to come back. No, they're not coming back because they're at the maximum improvement and they're going to be living with level 4 pain forever. That is a reality for a lot of folks. And so once, we don't negotiate, we don't want to send out an offer to settle. We don't want to do any of that until this medical treatment process is complete or as complete as it can be, because that is actually how the other side, that's how the insurance company and the lawyers for the corporations, that's how they value these cases. And so we want to make sure that, all the medical care that the client is going to need is received before we even start talking about negotiation and about dollars and cents, because again, in general, one bite at the apple. And when we do that, that's when we start to negotiate. And it's not like haggling over a used car. I mean, people, that talk to insurance companies and try to haggle, like, you're at the flea market haggling over a knick-knack or something like that. These are trained, systematic negotiators on the other side. They do this day in and day out. And so in some ways, it's more like psychological warfare, to be honest with you. The insurance company has one job: to pay as little as possible, irrespective of what the case is worth. In general, insurance companies have shareholders. Their duty to their shareholders is to claim as much profits every quarter as they possibly can. And so to do that, they want to take in the deductibles. They want to take in those payments and then pay out as little as possible. That's their job. Deny, delay, defend. They'll drag their feet, deny liability, blame, clients for not watching where they were going. They'll offer, right out of the gate, if a client's not represented, they'll offer some lowball amount to try to get the client to take it, sign a release, so that, they cap that claim. I've seen where they'll offer $5,000 on a case worth $100,000 and hope the client just says, well, that'll help this month. But what about the month after that and the month after that? This is the bigger picture that we're thinking about, when we're working through these cases. And so, after the medical treatment, after the investigation, when we get to the negotiation point, we're writing detailed settlement packages. Everything that is important in that case, we want to make sure that it's outlined. The chronologies, the timelines, photos if we have them, treatment plans, expert letters, pain journals, all of these things go into that. And if they don't respond, favorably, what do? Well, we file a lawsuit. And what I'll tell you is, these insurance companies know the law firms that file lawsuits versus the ones that don't. And in that first instance, they act accordingly, because they know if it's a righteous case and the demand is fair, that they're going to be better off to resolve that case against a law firm that's just going to file suit if they don't get what's fair for their client, because then they're going to have to hire a lawyer. In general, they're paying lawyers, by the hour. They're paying them at an hourly rate, and they're going to have to pay the fair amount at the end of it. And so, that is something that they're constantly looking at. And a strong trial lawyer doesn't just, settle, obviously, for whatever they can get. We're building cases so strong that the other side wants to settle. That's the goal. And there's a big difference there, when they know you're willing to go to trial. And a lot of times, cases settle on the courthouse steps. I've had cases settle for significant money on the courthouse steps. Literally, one case settled walking into opening arguments, and even then, they were trying to haggle. Will you take this number? No, we told you what our number was. Will you take this number? No, we told you what. No. Nothing less than what we said, or else we're going in and starting the trial. And so they know that. And in that case, they ended up paying the number before opening statements. And trial, to be honest with you, it's rare. Very small number of cases actually go to trial, but it's real. And so most cases don't go to trial. But the ones that do, they take a lot of effort from both sides. And the other side knows that, and we know that. From jury selection, obviously preparation, of our experts, preparation of our clients that are going to testify, preparing cross-examinations, mock trials. It's part science, part art, but a lot of time goes into that, honestly. And so the other side knows if there's a law firm or a lawyer that's going to take a case to trial, it's going to take them a lot of time. I've had cases where we prepped just for the trial after everything was done, for months, spent tens of thousands of dollars out of pocket, just to get ready for a trial, to get experts prepared, to get videos made, to get demonstratives made, where we have to explain an injury in a way that an eighth or ninth grader can understand it. I mean, that's really what we're seeking to do in trial, because you have to remember, in a trial, we're literally picking a handful of people. In South Carolina, for example, we're picking 12 people literally off the street. They were planning to go to work, that day, and they get picked for a jury. They don't know anything about the case. They don't know anything about what the client's been through. They don't know anything about what these injuries we're talking about are, and we have to break it all down, because by the end of that case, by the end of that trial, they have to understand it all with such crystal clear clarity that they're willing to take money from this person and give it to this person. That's the way it works. I mean, it's not glam, it's not easy. It's not a TV moment where everyone claps in the courtroom, although that has happened. But, in general, that does not happen. It is methodical, basic, down to the point. But when it hits, it's worth every hour of prep, because there's nobody better at valuing cases than a jury, in my view. Is it a perfect system? No, of course it's not. It's made up of imperfect people. Every human system is imperfect in some way, but it's as good as we've got. It is a system that uses the collective wisdom and knowledge of a group of people from the community and asks them to judge, a case and a damage. And when they render that verdict means truth. That is the truth, from their perspective. And I'll tell you, in my experience, juries work really hard to get to that truth. They really, the jurors we've talked to after cases really spend a lot of time talking through the components. They want to make sure that they're following the law. They want to make sure that they're doing the right thing. They take it seriously. And, the part no one wants to talk about with all of this is the emotional weight, right? And that's part of what insurance companies are banking on, that the client will break down, that the client will give up, that it will take too long. And that does happen. Clients do break down. Some clients do give up. You hear about children getting hurt, parents killed, families destroyed over and over and over, and it keeps bringing it up. And, there's never any closure in a situation like that, but to have to keep reliving it sometimes is tough. You sit across from someone who hasn't worked in a year and has medical bills stacked up like a phone book. It's difficult to make sense of a system, our system, where all the pain, all the damage, all the medical bills are on the front end. They're owed, they're due. We still have rent to pay. We have electric to pay. We have water to pay. And we're injured and we can't work. But all the compensation comes on the back end, right? After we've suffered through all of that. And that's really the difficult part for a lot of people. And that's why a lot of people do undersettle, their cases. But I see it as my job, not just to be their advocate, to be their lawyer, but to also be their hope. We carry that weight too until there's resolution. We know what people are going through, and we know that we have to be the optimistic, happy warrior for them, because their life is turned upside down. And, I tell our team this all the time. I say, look, everybody walks through that door looking for a lawyer, they think. But what 90% of them really need, more than an attorney, is an audience. They need an audience. They need a team that will listen to them, that will take the information that they give and try to explain what's happening as we go through this process, which doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem right that I have to go through all this in order to just try to get back to where I was before I was hurt through no fault of my own. But when it happens, when people understand that and they know that you're fighting for them, I mean, that's why we do it. That's why we do what we do. It's not for the glory or the check or the billboard. It's for that one moment where your client says, thank you, I can breathe again. That's what it's all about. So the next time, you pass one of these billboards or you see a TV ad with a lawyer's face on it, know that behind that is a team of people grinding every day to make a real difference for real people. And so why do we have to do the ads? And I always tell people, it's interesting because our what the ads are going for really are people that don't know the system, that don't know they don't have to pay a lawyer up front until they win, right? That don't know a lawyer will come to their home or their hospital. And we're advertising to everybody, but really a very small sliver of the population can actually hire a lawyer that have been injured, right? And so it's top of mind awareness. But it's top of mind awareness so that these people are educated so that when the worst does happen, they know that they have someone to turn to, that they have a team to turn to. And that team is made up of people grinding every day, to make a real difference for real people. And so, if you're ever in that situation, or if someone you love is, don't guess, don't Google it, don't wait. You got to call someone who knows what they're doing, even if it's not me. This is not an advertisement, but there's a process to getting full justice under the law, full justice that the law will allow, and that process is important because you deserve more than just a quick check. You deserve more than a catchphrase. You deserve someone on your side, on your team who gives a damn. At the end of the day, that's really what it's all about. And so that's all I wanted to say to you today on the Law Dad Roy podcast. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend, leave a review, or hit that follow button. And as always, stay sharp, stay compassionate, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone, and have a great week.